Hi guys, and welcome back to the FPL Duo. We're back for another stream. This one is a stream for the FPL Hidden Gems for this season, 23-24. But before we get started, how you doing, Jordan? Have you had a good weekend? What you been up to?
Yeah, it's been a good weekend. It's been watching obviously the finals of the tennis in Wimbledon, and yeah, it was a thrilling one. If anyone watched that, but yeah, been a nice weekend. Hopefully, everyone else has had a nice week, and obviously, we move forward with this next video.
Yeah, let's discuss obviously hidden gems. We said we'd do this video, probably put one a week out. So yeah, let's bring up some of the players that we're going to discuss for you guys today. And also, if you are joining in the stream, as always, make sure you do drop a like on the video, and also make sure you are subscribed to our YouTube channel. So let's bring up the slides. So yeah, let's discuss some players that we've picked out that we think could be some sleepers, maybe some gems, maybe some players that FPL managers aren't looking at, or the players that we feel might be underlooked. So first up is Luis Diaz of Liverpool. Now, we've included Luis Diaz as potentially a hidden gem this season. So we know with Luis Diaz, he started off the season or last season very well. He was one of Liverpool's better attacking players. And unfortunately, he got injured around October time, I think. And then he didn't return till about March. So he was out for about 4 or 5 months of the season. So unfortunately, he did miss large chunks of last season. I think that does, that is a big reason as to why he's been underlooked so far, I think. Because obviously he came back, he wasn't at his sharpest. But yeah, let's take a look at his season stats from last season. Obviously, he only played a few matches, so do bear that in mind. 2.4 shots per 90. He's also having 6.96 touches in the opposition box per 90 minutes. And yeah, I think Luis Diaz is one that I'm going to be definitely watching. I want to see, first of all, with Liverpool, the way they play, the new formation, the 3-box-3. Would Luis Diaz start on that left-hand side, or does Klopp want to go for someone like Jota? So that's going to be interesting to see, but I'll be keeping a close eye on preseason to see how many minutes Diaz does get. But when you take a look at Liverpool's fixtures, they're not too bad. Chelsea opening day could be seen as a tough one. Then they have Bournemouth in game week 2. After that, they've got Newcastle in game week 3, which could be a tough. Obviously, that is an away game. Then they got Villa game week 4, and then game week 5 it is Wolves. But Luis Diaz's ownership is only 6.3% as of recording, and he's one that definitely I'm interested in, especially at that price point, 7.5 million. I believe he was 8 million last season, if I remember correctly. But yeah, 7.5 could be a nice price. He is also obviously a midfielder, and as Dan says in the comments, I've got Diaz in at the moment to try cover Salah. That's going to be an interesting one. I'm not sure he can cover Salah due to Salah being on penalties, and also Salah being Liverpool's main goal threat. I'm not sure Luis Diaz can put up those attacking numbers. However, I still believe that he could be a potent option in our teams, and he's one. Maybe not the first, maybe not as a starting in my team, but once I see what Liverpool do in terms of who Klopp prefers in that front three, he's one I'm going to be looking at. What's your thoughts on Luis Diaz, Jordan, as a bit of a hidden gem this season? Do you see him bouncing back? Because obviously when he joined the Premier League in January, was it 2 seasons ago? Was it now? He's set the league on fire pretty much straight away. However, he did get that big injury last season.
Yeah, I was a massive admirer when Luis Diaz joined Liverpool. The impact he did have while they were pretty much struggling in that midfield, he made a massive, inspiration for Liverpool. I think in terms of players, he was pretty much their best player in his first season in that midfield. He literally was dangerous on the ball. He got past many people, and obviously was dangerous in the opposition's box. As you can tell, he's had around almost seven touches in the box from last season, and because of that injury as well, that did affect him obviously in his performance. But I think despite his injury, now that he's come back refreshed and everything, I still think he can be that inspiration role that we have seen him in when he did obviously start in that first season with Liverpool. So yeah, it would be a very interesting player, and I am still an admirer of Luis Diaz in terms of Liverpool, and I think he could have a decent season, especially if he can have a spot in that starting 11 as well, and obviously play a lot more minutes than what he did last season from his injury. And at 7.5 million, he could be a cheaper midfielder option to go for other than Salah, who obviously is 12.5 million. So there is a bit of hope that Diaz can spark a little bit of magic in that midfield, go for a cheaper Liverpool midfielder option. And you'd be saving a lot of money as well at 7.5 million. And obviously his ownership is obviously relatively low, as we don't know what sort of place Diaz will have in obviously Liverpool, as there is a lot of contention in that spot for others like Jota, etc. So yeah, he is definitely one to obviously look out for. And Liverpool's fixtures are a bit up and down as well, so it will be interesting to see which ones obviously Diaz does play in the first five.
Yeah, definitely Diaz is one to watch. I do like him as a player, and I think he could have a big season. Let's move on to another player now. This is another Liverpool player that we've put on our list as a hidden gem, and that is Gakpo. Obviously, Gakpo's ownership is only at 5% right now, so not many managers are looking at him as an option. He came in January of last season. He came in and he fitted in pretty quickly, settled in really well. I thought first couple of games, it did take him some time, but, he got used to the Premier League pretty quickly. And by the time the season was, finished, he was Liverpool's main man, really, down the middle. He was preferred over Nunes through the middle. And I think Gakpo definitely has potentially a big season in him. It's going to be interesting to see whether Klopp does play Darwin Nunes. We know towards the back end of last season, Darwin Nunes played a lot of minutes off the bench, and Gakpo was preferred down the middle. So I want to see if that stays, especially with the Liverpool midfielders, that they've signed with Szoboszlai and McAllister coming in. Does that mean Darwin's going to get more games? It's an interesting one to see, but Gakpo definitely is one that I like the look of. Again, we've mentioned Liverpool fixtures. I think they are pretty good. I'm not sure if the Villa at home fixture will be a grey one, but still the fixtures are still good. Bournemouth at game week 2 could be a nice one, and obviously Gakpo is priced as a 7.5 million forward now, so he's not a midfielder. I think he came in as a midfielder, but has a positional switch, so that kind of maybe lowers his appeal a bit. But at 7.5 million, he's the same price as Nunes and Nkunku, etc. And at that bracket, I think he's one that it looks interesting for me. And for me, Gakpo is one that I'll be looking at. Maybe not to start with, but I think definitely once we know if he's going to start down the middle, and if we see he's preferred over Nunes, he becomes an option for me anyway. Well, what's your take on Gakpo, Jordan, as an option?
Yeah, I really like Gakpo as another option for Liverpool. Obviously, he's a wait and see to see whether Darwin or Gakpo whichever starts in that forward position, as there is a bit of contention. But I think what I like about Gakpo is, especially in his forward position, is considering Darwin had many chances to score in many opportunities last season, he was also not the most clinical player. Other than, if you look at Gakpo, there is a bit more clinical edge to him, obviously from scoring in comparison to Darwin. So I think there may be a slight edge to maybe slide towards Gakpo. And because now he's a forward position and not a midfielder, I think that does provide a bit of variety in that forward player selection, especially around the price of 7.5 million, where you may want to go for a cheaper player in that forward cheap price, other than going with Harry Kane, for example, or Gabriel Jesus. With 7.5, it does provide you with a cheaper budget to work around. And also, Gakpo will be interesting to see if he will play, obviously, in that forward position for Liverpool. And I do expect Liverpool to also have a much higher boundary this season compared to last, from the very beginning, especially with their fixtures are obviously again a bit mix and match. But yeah, Gakpo will be an interesting pick His ownership is currently 5%, so not a lot of people have taken really a look at Gakpo, but he may be one to look out for, obviously, through the season, and he may be another person that you may want to look at during Liverpool's games, whether he starts or not. He may be a good player that comes off the bench, like we've seen with Darwin, and basically changes the game and the aspect of it.
Okay, let's pull up another player, and this one is actually a Man City player. So that is Phil Foden. Obviously, he's on the thumbnail. Now, Phil Foden's one that is an interesting player and is an interesting pick for me anyway. I think this guy could have a breakout. See, I know he's already had a lot of like successful seasons, but I think this could be the season where he actually becomes a fully first team fledged player for the Man City first team. You take a look at some of his stats last season. Obviously, these are per 90, so just over 2 shots a game, just over a shot on target a match. Shot creating actions is obviously if he dribble or pass before a shot is, before a player takes a shot. So 4.84 a match, 6.4 as all touches in the opposition box per 90 minutes, and also 1.9 successful take-ons. And Man City are one of the best attacking teams in the league. Well, they probably are the best attacking team in the league. You take a look at the first 5 fixtures as well. Again, fixtures look great. They've got Burnley, then Newcastle. Obviously, in between game week 1 and game week 2, Man City will have their Super Cup, fixture. So that's one to bear in mind. However, after that, Sheffield on game week 3, Fulham game week 4. And we also know, looking at Man City, we know Gundogan's left. So that's confirmed already. It looks like Mahrez is off to Saudi. There's also rumors going around that Bernardo Silva can leave. So that's a lot of outgoings for Man City. And Kevin De Bruyne, also, we don't know if he's going to be completely fit to start the season. And if that is the case, Foden becomes a great option, in my opinion. And I'd expect him to start. So you look at Burnley as well. Man City are at the first game of the season as well. The kickoff first, I think, is a Friday night game. And the interesting thing is, we're probably going to hear team news. We expect to get leaks, obviously, before the first game. If we hear Foden is starting, maybe you'll see a lot of managers bring him in last minute if they see he's in that starting 11, because whenever Foden does play, he's got a very high ceiling as an FPL option. It's very, exciting to have in your team, especially when he starts. So yeah, he's one that if I see come closer to game week 1 that Pep started him against Burnley, then I would be tempted to bring him in. But yeah, we'll take a look at preseason as well and see how Pep utilizes him. But I expect a more prominent role from Foden this season. What's your thoughts on it, Jordan, with Foden? Obviously, ownership is over 10% now, so maybe there are some managers looking at him.
Yeah, I mean, as we've spoken about, there's a lot of offloaded players coming out of, obviously, Man City in that midfield, so that does provide a more beneficial thing for Foden starting more games now, considering that most of these players are now leaving, obviously, Man City. And yeah, as a promising player, Foden hasn't been that bad around for, obviously, Man City when he has played games, and he has looked dangerous at times in them. But in particular, their first fixture against Burnley away is a fixture where you normally see a high scoring one coming from that. And obviously, I do see Foden probably starting that game. I've actually got Foden in my team at the moment in my starting 11, because I have considered playing a Man City midfielder this season to start off with. And obviously, I did that last season with Mahrez, but it didn't go the way I wanted it to. But I have a good feeling with Foden. I think at the start of this season, he might have a good stormer with Burnley away if he is to play in that starting game. But at the price of 7.5 million, I think that's a comfortable price margin as well for Foden if he is to start as well, because he is cheaper than other midfielders like Saka and Odegaard, who are around that 8+ million mark. So, and obviously in the past, we have seen obviously Pep Roulette, where we're not sure who we're going to play in that midfield for Man City, as most of them were not nailed at all. Maybe we see Foden this season become the nailed midfielder, and obviously have him mostly throughout our season in our team. So yeah, he is a promising player to obviously bring in and obviously start. Yeah, again, his ownership has climbed a bit at 11.4%. So a lot of people have obviously noticed that Man City are getting rid of their midfielders a bit, unloading a bit, so it is a bit lighter than usual. And yeah, his attacking stats have proven that not even a full season where he started every game, he can still be dangerous. From obviously his touches in the opposition box, are averaging around 6 touches in there. It's pretty dangerous. And obviously his shots on target as well. At least one every then is on target. So yeah, he is definitely a player to look out for, I think, this season from the very beginning.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Let's move on to another player then, as the next on the list, and this is actually a new signing. Obviously, we've taken these stats from the Bundesliga, so do bear that in mind when you are, because they are obviously quite higher. So yeah, Christopher Nkunku has just joined Chelsea. Obviously, a big signing for Chelsea. I think. So I've watched quite a lot of Nkunku in the Champions League, and I think he's an excellent player. I think he's brilliant. So it's going to be interesting to see if he can show that form that he had with Leipzig, and show that for Chelsea. So it's one to watch. Obviously, we know that he is slightly a bit of an unknown quantity. Obviously, he's not played in the Premier League. However, obviously, he's proven in the Champions League as well. He's a top player. And yeah, I think Chelsea definitely need a player like Nkunku because, you take a look at some of his stats. He's taken just over 3 shots a game. His 6.07 touches in the opposition box a game as well. Successful take-ons 1.8 per game as well. So he's a very creative player. He likes to beat a man. He likes to, get involved in the attacking third. He also likes to take a shot off. He is a goal scorer as well. He's a very exciting player, and I'm excited to watch what he does in the Premier League. Definitely. And he's priced at 7.5 million, which I think is a very, very good price for him. Because if he was priced at 8 million or 8.5, I think it would have put a lot of us off. Because I remember last season, obviously Darwin Núñez had just signed for Liverpool, and they priced him at 9 million straight away. Maybe because of his fee, I don't know. But I think coming in at 7.5 is interesting because a lot of us have Jesus in our team at 8 million. And if we see Jesus ain't performing and then Nkunku, starts the season off really well, Jesus to Nkunku could be like a nice little downgrade depending on how Chelsea do. And you take a look at Chelsea's fixtures, the first 5. Liverpool, okay, that could be a bit tough, even though it's a home fixture. They got West Ham after that. I think let's see how they do in the first 2 games, whether Nkunku settles in, whether he hits the ground running. And then after that, from game 3 onwards, he becomes a serious option potentially with Luton, Forest in back-to-back home games, and then Bournemouth in game 5. So, yeah, Nkunku is one I'm watching, just because obviously I think he's a good player, and I want to see what he does in the Premier League. And in terms of FPL, of course, he's going to be an option, I think, this season. Whether Chelsea and Pochettino can make a system that will allow Nkunku to flourish. So, yeah, I don't know if you've watched much of him, Jordan, obviously Nkunku, but what's your take on Chelsea as a whole anyway? Because obviously they didn't have a great season last year. Obviously finishing, was it 12th, I think it was, or 11th? Can they turn it around? And what's your thoughts? Are you just going to wait and see, I'm guessing?
Yeah, I think we're in a good position with this for waiting and seeing how Chelsea do, because their first 2 fixtures are a bit of a challenge. I think a test to see how Chelsea do at the start of the season. So yeah, I'm pretty much going to wait game week 1 and 2 to see how Chelsea get on, whether they start off good or bad, and then obviously however well they look come game week 3 will determine whether I bring in a player like Nkunku to obviously the squad. At 7.5 million, another forward around that mark, I think that's a decent price for him, affordable obviously, and a cheaper option to go for as well again. And I do hope Chelsea have a good start, because obviously we do want to bring in Chelsea players this season. I feel like the past 2 seasons we've sort of tried to bring these players in for Chelsea, but they haven't really worked out, especially for me. They're kind of like a curse, I would say, of the team at the moment in terms of the players. But hopefully they can turn it around this season with a new manager. And obviously they've unloaded a lot of Chelsea players as well in their squad, so it's not so bloated and overly packed as well. So yeah, I think this will breathe fresh air. I think this new signing obviously Chelsea have made, and obviously from his stats, he looks like a very dangerous player. I haven't particularly seen him in obviously the Bundesliga season, but from his stats, I can already say and see that he can obviously create a bit of trouble against opposition teams. especially Luton. Obviously, the home fixture, newly promoted team, and then Nottingham Forest at home as well, and then Bournemouth away. So 3 green fixtures. I think there's a good test to see what Chelsea players will obviously do well, in particular in Nkunku. And if he can do well, obviously, then yeah, he becomes an option, I think, for us in FPL. And obviously at 16.9%, a lot of you already have him in your team. So I won't argue with that. I mean, even though we haven't seen what Chelsea are going to be like, it's worth taking the punt on it nonetheless.
Mm-hmm. We've got a comment here from Dan who says Nkunku, Jesus, and Haaland up front for me at the moment. Interesting. Cole, welcome to the channel. 8 to 16 looks bad for Chelsea. Yeah, there are some fixture swings later on with Chelsea, and also FPL says, "What about Chilwell?" What about Chilwell? So yeah, I think Chilwell is an interesting option, but again, I think I want to wait and see. And I am slightly worried about Chilwell and Reece James due to how injury prone they are. We know that they struggled a lot with injuries, and that slightly puts me off bringing them in. But obviously, when they're fit, we know how good they are, Chilwell and James, with in terms of assists and goals. So yeah, they are. You can definitely start with Chilwell maybe on a bench because obviously he's only priced at 5.5 million this season. But yeah, he's a good option. But I don't know if I'll be including him in my starting 11. Let's move on to the next player, and that is Nkunku's teammate. So that is actually Raheem Sterling. Now, Raheem Sterling, obviously, he was signed by Chelsea at the start of last season. Sorry, against from Man City. He came in. He didn't have the best of seasons. I think that's fair to say. He did struggle a bit up and down. Obviously, Chelsea as a whole weren't particularly great. So obviously the forwards did struggle in that. However, Sterling, his attacking stats aren't actually too bad if you take a look at it just purely on numbers. 2 shots a game. He's also getting just over 5.7 touches in the opposition box per 90 minutes. 3.24 shot creating actions per 90. He's also pretty successful in take-ons as well with 1.86. So Sterling, I think, is definitely one that I can, say he could be a bit of a gem because there's not many managers that are looking at him, especially with the way, in his first season with Chelsea and then the way they played, it wasn't very, it wasn't a successful season for Chelsea. So he could be being underlooked, and he's priced at 7 million. And in previous seasons, going back to in his Man City days, I think he was a 9-10 million price. I think it was around 10 million that was he priced at. So we know the potential Sterling has as a Premier League asset in previous seasons. He got a lot of goals at Man City and assists, but can he replicate that under Pochettino at Chelsea? I think he could definitely. I think he's still a good player, and he's one that I think will be potentially an option this season. Again, it's very hard to say right now without watching Chelsea play. Because Chelsea, we don't know how they're going to be. They could be amazing, or they could be how they were last season. So it's very tough to say until we actually watch a few of their games and see how their players gel. Chelsea are also linked to sign Moises Caicedo of Brighton. I think he's going to be an interesting signing. I think he's going to be a brilliant signing if they can get if they can get that done with Enzo in midfield as well. So I do like Chelsea's squad. I think they're building a good team, but can't really give much of an opinion on it until I've seen a few more games, especially preseason. I'm assuming it's the same again, Jordan. Pretty much what we said within Nkunku is kind of a wait and see.
Yes, it is pretty much a wait and see. Obviously, for Chelsea players like now Sterling, I think it'd be a great addition though to double up on Nkunku and Sterling if obviously Chelsea have a great start, because obviously their prices combined, that's only 14.5 million that you'll be spending on 2 of those players, because obviously Sterling's had a massive nerf considering his price last season I think was 9 million and now dropped down to 7 million now. So he becomes a steal if Chelsea turn out to have a massive great start to the season, and to integrate him into your midfield, I think maybe considerably quite good. I think he might be that last 5th spot that you might be looking out for in terms of a player that can potentially cause trouble, score goals, get assists. He didn't have such a bad season, I say last. He had 23 starts with 6 goals and 4 assists. So not a bad season Sterling had. But I think this season he can obviously excel that and obviously do better with his new manager. And obviously the midfield pick is now less of a pick and mix, more like a more closer selection now. So yeah, we can probably see more starts from Sterling, and obviously maybe see more performance from him, as we know he was a great player for Man City. So it would be nice to see him replicate that at Chelsea.
Hmm. Um, let's pull up the next player, and that's another player similar to Sterling, where he had a bit of a drop of form, it's fair to say, last season, and that is Son at Tottenham. Before that season, in the 21-22 season, we know Son was brilliant. He was, I think, one of the top scorers in the league. And then contrast that to last season, obviously Son, you know, by all standards, he had a very poor season. I think that's fair to say. You take a look at his numbers. Obviously, they weren't too great. He's averaging just over a shot a game. He's only taking about 2.5 shots a game as well. His successful take-ons was very low, so he wasn't beating his man often. He's had a big price drop as well. I think he was 11.5 last season, if I remember correctly. He's come down to 9 million, and that makes him a bit more of an attractive option now at that price. We know Tottenham have signed James Maddison as well, so it's going to be interesting to see how they fit all those players in. It looks like Kane is probably going to stay. There is rumors that he might go to Bayern Munich, so we'll have to wait and see on that. Obviously, Postecoglou is the new Spurs manager. He's come in. So again, Spurs are similar to Chelsea. It's going to be interesting with the new manager, the type of football they play. And Son, with that big drop in form, he could be an underlooked gem going into this season. Ownership's at 5.7%. So we know not many people are looking at him. And yeah, I think Son is one that I'm going to be definitely looking at. Not at the start. I don't think I'll start with him. But, game week 3, Bournemouth, game week 4, Burnley, game week 5, Sheffield. Those three look like good fixtures. And if I see Son, if Son has a good game against Brentford and Man United in the first two fixtures, and he looks good and he's, looks fit again, because there was, rumors as well that he was playing with a hernia injury a lot of last season. He had to play with injections and etc. So, yeah, if he looks good in the first two, the next three, I think definitely I'll be looking at Son to bring in, and he could be a gem. What's your take on it, Jordan? Obviously, Son, can he bounce back from that poor season he had last year?
Yeah, I think when he was struggling with obviously injuries and whatnot last season, that did affect his performance. That was very obvious. I think with a fully fit Son, obviously we're going to see a much difference in him. We do know of that combo of obviously Kane and Son. They obviously work well together, and obviously they're both at full fitness. And I think that's what we missed last season. I think because of Son struggling with injury, you only really saw Harry Kane being the potent, obviously player for Spurs. But I think if Son was fit for obviously last season, not struggling from injuries, we possibly might have seen it from both of them instead of just seeing it from Harry Kane. So come this season, we obviously might see obviously more involvement from Son now that he's had a rest and obviously recovered from obviously struggling from last season. And I think it's similar to Chelsea in terms of their fixtures. Obviously, they have two difficult ones, which obviously in game week 1 and 2, Spurs have Brentford away and Man United at home. And then obviously come game week 3 to 5, that's when the fixtures start to bounce back and return really nicely for Spurs when obviously they have Bournemouth away, Burnley away, and then Sheffield United at home. So they have back-to-back newly promoted teams, which I think is a massive eye-opener if you are looking to bring Spurs players in around that time, obviously, of the fixtures. So, yeah, he could be a decent, obviously, player to bring in other than Kane. And I have seen a lot of drafts where Son might be the optimal option to go for instead of Harry Kane because of his price. Because obviously Son is 9 million and Harry Kane is obviously 12.5 million. So you are saved as well money if Son becomes a viable pick over Harry Kane or one or the other. So yeah, he will be interesting, obviously, pick this season. I do hope Son does bounce back as well for Spurs because he was at times exciting in last season, especially in that Leicester game where he did go on and scored like that hat trick in I think like 10 minutes. So yeah, he can produce a lot of magic, at Son, when he's basically on form.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, moving on to the next player, and that is his teammate again. Obviously, new signing. Obviously, Leicester were relegated last season, and Maddison has come back up with a 40 million move to Spurs. So I think this is quite a big signing for Spurs. I think it's a good signing from Spurs as well to get James Maddison. We know James Maddison, individually, he didn't actually have that bad of a season. I think he got quite a few goals for Leicester. He was definitely one of their better players. And I think it's a good signing. Take a look at his stats in terms of per 90. 3 shots per 90. He was taking there's all five. He was making 5 shot creating actions per 90 as well, which is quite good as well. In terms of fixtures, similar to Son, the first 2 could be a bit tricky. But then after that, we know there's a bit of a fixture swing. 2 newly promoted teams back to back. Bournemouth as well in game week 3. So yeah, James Maddison, especially at that price point, 7.5 million, he could be one that we start with in our game week 1 teams. I think his ownership is quite high. Surprisingly, it's 17%. So maybe a lot of managers are looking at him. So maybe he's not as hidden as he was when we did the draft. So I think James Maddison's one that could be a very important signing, especially with the way Spurs and Postecoglou want to play with that 10, that creative 10. Dropping in just behind Kane and creating some space for the likes of Kane, Son, Kulusevski in that pockets of space that he picks up. So he's one to watch. He does chip in with goals and assists. So at 7.5, around that bracket, you've got the likes of Sterling, Foden, etc. He could be a standout. Again, it depends on how Spurs actually start the season off, because again, they had a poor season and we'll have to see if they can bounce back. But what's your take on this, Jordan? Obviously, Leicester did have a poor season, but Maddison was a bit of a shining light in certain games where he was the one that looks like he's the only one that could probably get a goal.
Yeah, he had a decent season with 10 goals and 9 assists, Maddison, for his previous club, Leicester. So he wasn't at all bad performer, considering Leicester were not great either as a team whole. He still held on his form, Maddison, and now that he's moved on from Leicester, now at Spurs, it will be interesting to see whether he obviously can play the same amount of minutes he did at obviously Leicester, because as someone in the chat has mentioned, Raz, if he does start on the right, he does become risky because of rotation with Kulusevski. So we obviously do have to look at that, his position, where he does play, because obviously that may mean he does play less minutes than what he normally would at Leicester. But nonetheless, even if he does rotate with Kulusevski, I still think he could be a decent option when he is obviously starting in games and maybe coming off the bench. Imagine he can be a game changer type player where he can change momentum of what's going on the pitch if Spurs are struggling, which in game week 1 and 2 that could be possible with Brentford away and Man United at home, where he could be obviously changing that form that he can bring to obviously the team. But yeah, he's an exciting signing, I think, for Spurs. Definitely loading up on that midfield options in terms of the attack. So yeah, he is definitely a player to look out for. His price again, 7.5 million. There is a lot of players that are priced around that particular area. So again, it's a more attractive, cheaper option to go for, other than Son and Kane, who are much more expensive. And yeah, with obviously Maddison at priced at that, a lot of people have caught on to it as his ownership has climbed at 70%. I still think he's obviously a hidden gem, despite his ownership being a little bit higher. But yeah, obviously we wait and see come the season when it does start how Spurs do against Brentford and obviously Man United, and then maybe we can consider bringing in Maddison game week 3 to 5.
Moving on to the next hidden gem, and that is Enciso of Brighton. Now, we know Enciso actually had a very good ending to the season. He was picking up quite a few goals and assists towards the end. You take a look at his stats as well per night, very impressive. He's taking just over 4 shots per game, just over 2 shots, 2 shots on target per match as well. Just 5.4 touches in the opposition box as well, 3.46 successful take-ons as well. So he's very much involved in all the attacking phases for Brighton, and he's a player that I actually like a lot. I think it's a brilliant signing again from Brighton, which they managed to somehow bring these players out of nowhere. But yeah, the scouting department's excellent. I think Enciso, especially at that 5.5 million price bracket, I don't think there's any better really in the game, if I'm being honest. His ownership is around 12%, so it's climbed up slightly. And I think Enciso is someone that you're probably going to have in your team if you go with the Mo Salah. So if you have Haaland and Salah, obviously stretches your budget quite a lot. So you're gonna have to save and scrimp on other areas of your pitch. So Enciso is a great player to have in your team, I think, if you're gonna have the likes of Salah or a Trent, etc. And when money's tight. If not, if you're going without Salah and you're only going with the one premium Haaland, you're probably not going to include someone like Enciso due to him being so cheap. But he is a very good player. And Luton game week 1, Wolves game week 2, and then West Ham as well game week 3. So 3 pretty good fixtures. We know Brighton had a very good season last year. They're going to be looking to kick on again and try improve on that league position if they can. So yeah, I think at that price bracket you can't really go wrong. There's not many options in terms of that type of quality around the 5.5 million mark. So yeah, what's your take on it in CISO? Would you like the player, or do you think you probably won't include him in your draft?
I think he's a quality player. I mean, he only has 7 starts with Brighton, yet he still scored 4 goals and managed to get 3 assists. So yeah, he is a very interesting player, and he's currently in my team as well. My midfielder picks, I think my cheapest midfielder pick at 5.5 million, which I think is really good for him. Obviously, his form near the end of the season was quality, and I think he can be very dangerous considering Brighton have Luton at home as their first fixture. If Enciso starts in that game, I think he could really have a good game in that match. I think possibly a double haul from his quality. I think he won't have a problem. Obviously, being in his position in midfield. Obviously, McAllister going as well from Brighton. That does help out, I guess, with Enciso playing in the midfield. And yeah, Brighton are an attacking team, and Enciso is a nice addition to them as well. I think a nice replacement for obviously Brighton midfielders that have left. And yeah, he can be quite dangerous on the ball. Watching him in playing matches, and obviously his goals, pretty much one was a wilder long range goal, which was nice to see him score. So yeah, I think he's definitely. I'm very surprised his ownership is actually 12.4%. I thought it'd be really high considering his price. Cheap, as we said, there's probably not a midfielder price that though. That's pretty much a good pick to go for. I think Enciso is pretty much the only one that I'd actually look at. So yeah, I think he's definitely a player that you want in your team.
Mm-hmm. Let's move on to the next pick, and this may be an interesting one because this is actually Taiwo Awoniyi. And Awoniyi actually had a very good season last year. He scored quite a lot of goals. Again, back end of last season, he was scoring pretty much, it seemed like, every week. He was taking just over 2 shots per game as well. There's also, just under a shot on target per game as well. Touches in the opposition box, you're looking at 3.53. He was quite clinical towards the back end. I don't know if you've got the stats in terms of how many he scored, but do you know how many he scored exactly?
He scored 10 goals last season.
Yeah, so yeah, double digits for Awoniyi playing Forest. Obviously, a very newly promoted team at that point, and yeah, very good season from him. However, if you take a look at the fixtures, Nottingham Forest do actually have one of the worst starts in terms of fixtures. So he's definitely in a void in terms of having him at the start of your team from game week 1. However, later down the line, after game week 5, game week 6, etc., when the fixtures turn slightly again, he's one to consider if you need a cheap striker. He's only priced at 6.5 million, so he is affordable. There's not much. If we're being honest, in that price bracket, 6.5 and under, there's not really much else. There's DCL, but he's injury prone. Awoniyi is a good cheap option to have, but again, I wouldn't recommend you start with him. Obviously, Arsenal in game week 1 is going to be tough. Sheffield, Man United, Chelsea, and Burnley. But he's one later down the line. If money is a stretch, which I don't think probably will be with the way the pricing is this year, he's one that you could be looking to bring into your team. What's your thoughts on him as a player? Were you impressed, getting 10 goals last season?
Yeah, I was surprised at the end of the season that Awoniyi just literally came out of nowhere and started scoring a mad spree of goals near the end of the season. It came out of absolutely nowhere. No one really saw it coming. And I think his ownership was pretty much similarly close to what it is at the moment at 1.8%. So not many people really saw it coming at all, including myself. But it will be interesting to see what he's like this season. Obviously, at Nottingham Forest, priced at 6.5 million. another decent cheap option to go for, where he may obviously have moments of madness that we did see last season. They do have two newly promoted teams in the first 5 fixtures. Sheffield United in game week 2 and then Burnley at home in game week 5. So those could be interesting 2 fixtures where you might see Aroni possibly score maybe a goal or 2 in those fixtures. I don't really see it in the other 3 against Arsenal, Man United or Chelsea, obviously, that because Nottingham Forest don't have obviously the best starting games, but in between you could maybe go for a punt on Awani, depending on who your forward players have in game week 2 and game week 5. If you think he's going to be an optimal asset to go for between those 2. But I think throughout the season, I think when obviously Nottingham Forest's fixtures do improve in the long-term run, you could maybe opt to go for Awani, depending on how well his form has gone, obviously for Nottingham Forest until then. But yeah, he is another player that could spruce, obviously, in the Premier League, and in particular at Nottingham Forest, because we also saw his partner, Gibbs White, do similar things as well.
Just a quick comment here: 4 million goalie who will start. So I don't think there's any 4 million goalies that I'd expect to start, but one you could actually include is Areola at West Ham. Now, Areola did get quite a few games last season for West Ham, but Fabianski and Areola, Fabianski's priced at 4.5. But yeah, if I was going to go with one, I think Areola is a good one to have on the bench in case he becomes the regular starter at West Ham. Raz also with a comment: would you take a partner on Alvarez at 6.5 million with KDB being out at the start? Last season we saw with Haaland, or is Awani a higher priority? I definitely don't think Awani is a high priority at the start of the season just because of the fixtures. Arsenal in game week 1, you'd expect Arsenal to win that pretty comfortably. Again, the fixtures aren't too great after that. So in terms of game week 1, I think Alvarez could be a great punt. And as I mentioned earlier on the stream, Man City are the first game of the season. They kick off on Friday night, I believe. So we will probably hear some early team news surrounding Man City. So if we hear that Alvarez starts, definitely he could be a one that you bring in last minute and take that punt at 6.5. And moving on, I think this is the final player on our list for hidden gems, and that is actually Awani's teammate, and that is Gibbs White. Now, again, Gibbs White was very impressive for Forest. Obviously, they signed him for big money, and I thought he did really, really well in that role, and obviously managed to stay up with Forest, along with Awani and even the likes of Brennan Johnson, etc. And yeah, his stats per night, obviously not too bad. Again, he's priced at 6 million, so he's cheaper than quite a few other midfielders. Ownership is very low at 4.3%. But yeah, I think I like Gibbs White. I think he's a good player. Again, similar to Awani, he's probably not someone I'd look to bring in from the start. He's someone that I'd look to bring in when the fixtures turn again. I'm just going to take a look at Forest's fixtures. So bear with me for a sec. Taking a look at their fixtures. Their fixtures don't look great till about game week. I mean, game week 8, they've got Palace, and then game week 9, they've got Luton. But then after that, they've got Liverpool. Their fixtures don't really look great until game week 14, if I'm being honest, when they've got Everton, Fulham, Wolves, Spurs, Bournemouth. So I think Forest isn't someone that we'll start with, but later down the line, they might become options, but you never know. If they start the season off well, there could be an option. But what's your take on Gibbs White, Jordan? Obviously, he did pretty well in terms of goals as well and assists last season.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised at his assists, because he did get 12 last season, which I didn't realise how many assists he actually got, Gibbs White. And then 5 goals on top of that with 36 starts. So he's pretty much a nailed midfielder to have on the Forest that you can possibly rely on most games where the fixtures do become easy for Nottingham Forest. But there is games where he has surprisingly got assists in that have been difficult. So yeah, he's an interesting one, Gibbs White. He did also provide me with a double haul last season near the end of the season to go for a punt, which did actually pay off for me, where he did score and get an assist, I think, in one of the last games of the season. So yeah, he's definitely an interesting player, another player I admire from obviously a newly promoted a team from the season before, which have considerably stayed up as well. So it's nice to see Nottingham Forest. That's a team that obviously entered the Premier League not so long ago, stay up in the Premier League. And I think without these players like Gibbs White, they'll obviously be in trouble. So he's definitely a key player to have in the team. Obviously from his stats, he's definitely shown that last season. And yeah, he's another player too. Obviously, he could be a hidden gem to obviously see in this season whether he can replicate what he did, and obviously maybe improving his numbers as well this season. Obviously, as we've seen, not the Forest fixtures aren't that great until later on in the season. Then maybe you can consider bringing in Gibbs White. It does depend on also though his form, because in difficult fixtures he can show he's a great asset to have. Despite that, but at 4.3%, it's understandable with the fixtures not being the greatest. So his price though at 6 million, so he could be a decent option to go for a cheap midfielder.
And yeah, I'd agree with pretty much what you said there. But yeah, 12 assists last season for Gibbs White, which is very, very impressive. Let's quickly recap though some of the players that we've mentioned. If you missed out, also guys, make sure you do smash the like button if you are watching, and if you are enjoying the content. It helps the channel out a lot. All we ask for is a like on the video, and also if you are new around here and you're first time watching, please make sure you subscribe to the channel as well. We have a lot of content to come this season, and hopefully we can also hit that 1,000 subscriber mark, which is the next target. So make sure you like, subscribe, share the video as well if you can. All your help is appreciated. So yeah, quickly recapping the players. We've got Luis Diaz, we've got Gakpo, we've got Foden, Nkunku, Raheem Sterling, Son, Maddison, and Enciso, and then Awoni as well, and finally Gibbs White. So those are some of the hidden gems this season that maybe not many managers are looking at, that we think could play a big part in FPL. So these are the one to watch, guys. Let us know with the picks. Do you agree with them? Do you disagree with them? Is there someone else that we've left out that you would have included? Let us know who your hidden gems are. Anyone else that we know we've not discussed, let us know in the comments below. Also, if you are watching on a playback, as always, make sure you do smash the like button, guys. And again, we're back. I think next week we'll probably have another stream out, maybe midweek. Make sure you are subscribed to us so you don't miss out on any content or when we go live. And yeah, we're probably going to wrap it up here. Just want to say a massive thank you to everyone that has watched this stream. And yeah, we'll be back soon. Make sure you follow us on Twitter as well so you don't miss out. All the links for our socials are in the description below. Anything else you'd like to add, Jordan, before we wrap the stream up?
Just thank you guys for watching. Hopefully you have enjoyed the rest of your weekend. And yeah, we'll see you very soon for another video. But then, until then, take care and see you soon.